All right, well, let's go ahead and get started since it's just a little past 3. I'm Jason Fedota. I'm the Territory Sales Manager for Splunk here in town. Just by show of hands real quick, how many of you guys have heard of Splunk? That's better. When I started almost 2 years ago, it was like one person, right? Our company was about, at that time, about 1,200 people. We're about 2,000 people now. Back then, we had 6 state agencies that were customers. We're now up to 17. So, in the past couple of years, we've grown dramatically, and we hope to continue to grow, especially in the public sector space, and that's good for me because I live here, and I've been working with the states for the last 15 years or so, so I don't intend on leaving anytime soon. So we're going to talk today about, take the topic for what you will. I know this was a government transformation conference, and so I'm trying to sort of map to the larger theme of the conference. And I sort of focused in on service delivery, right? So if you're in unemployment insurance, right, you're delivering claims, unemployment insurance claims, or disability insurance claims. If you're in pension, you're doing that work there. If you're in tax, you're doing the tax work. If you're in health, you're doing the health work. But in any way, you're delivering service to the state of California citizens, right? So today, what I really wanted to talk about is how this has changed in my career, really, selling to the state, right? When I started in 2000 versus kind of where it is now. And maybe what you should be looking at going forward, right? Or at least what I'm hearing from my customers and some of the leadership here in town about how they want to evolve service delivery as we go forward. So that's kind of the topic. This is just a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. So we're going to start with kind of what we did yesterday, right? What happened in the last decade? What were we trying to accomplish? Then talk about what we're going to do in the next generation. And then at the very end, we'll talk a little bit about how to achieve those goals, right? So I need you guys to come back with me a little bit 15 years ago, right, the year 2000. And I'm stuck in 1995 right now because I watched that OJ show last night. Did you guys watch it? No? It was compelling. It was good. It's like reliving it. So 2000, just a couple of the marquee events, just to kind of benchmark time frame here, right? Time Warner AOL. I think they just broke up recently, right? I'm not really sure. Speaking about divorces, Tiger here was probably the most recognizable athlete in the world at the time. At this point, he held 3 of the 4 major championship trophies, and he went on to win the 4th in 2001 to have the Tiger Slam. This is interesting. We do a lot of security work in town. Splunk is often known for the security stuff we do. Do you guys remember the I Love You virus back in 2000? Maybe one of the original phishing attacks. Okay, pretty interesting. And then there was a senator that was elected in New York. Remarkably, she's still here, and she's doing something different this year. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to look back at that stuff. So what was happening in the world of technology at that time back in the state? Think about it for a minute. Was anybody part of a Y2K team? Anybody? Yeah, I still got my coffee mug, right? And nothing broke. It was amazing. But what was really going on when I first started was large-scale modernization, right? I mean, technology had kind of got to this point now as sort of a tipping point, you might say, where there was a lot of stuff out there that was available. And commercial organizations had adopted a lot of it already, but public sector was now looking at this saying, what can we adopt, right? How can we kind of move into this digital age? And the big force behind that really was internet and the internet architecture that came with it and all that. So when I first started, we were really looking at modernizing the core business systems for a lot of state agencies, right? Whether it was child welfare services or child support enforcement or the jail management systems or the prison system, statewide, that kind of stuff was really in play. And the way we were attacking that problem was really with some of the big line technology providers, right? So some of the big package solutions. It's kind of funny when I look at this slide, and I worked for Oracle for a while. Oracle now owns Siebel and PeopleSoft, right? So they've kind of swallowed a couple of those providers. But back in 2000, Siebel was doing a lot of that front-end work, call centers, service desk, that kind of stuff. PeopleSoft was obviously the default HR and financials provider of choice for a lot of governments. And then Oracle and SAP played a big role in that financial space as well. So a lot of the big package providers were playing here. On the other hand, and this is probably even more so the case with the state of California, we all as state of Californians, we all think we're unique, right? We all want to do things our own way, right? So don't try to fit me into one of these packages that you built for somebody else, right? I want a custom system, or I want a system that matches all of my unique requirements, right? So if you think back in 2000 when we started building this, it really hasn't significantly changed. We've made some steps using some of these pre-built packages, but a lot of the systems that we were modernizing back in 2000 were being done by the large services firms, right? So your IBMs, your Accentures, Unisys. If you think about child welfare system, that was an IBM project, right? Child support enforcement was a coalition of IBM, CGI, and somebody else, I can't remember who. SOMS was a big EDS project before they got swallowed by HP, right? So this was kind of the state of the world back then. What we were really trying to do, I think, there was a couple of objectives we were trying to achieve. One is, we wanted to leverage the new technology that was out there, right, and kind of move things to a more modern platform. But the other thing we were really trying to do, if you think about SOMS in particular, we were just trying to get all the paper out of the index files and make them digital, right? And so in a lot of ways, we were modernizing our business processes and just trying to get them so that we could leverage the data that should be in those systems in a more logical and easy way. We were digitizing our business processes, really. Okay, so that was kind of step A. That's where we were headed. And so there's this great website, and I don't know if you guys have ever been to it, but you can go out and look at like web pages from past years. I don't know what the URL is, but so I went back and Googled DMV, right? So what's the face of government to most people, right? It's your DMV or it's your franchise tax board generally, right? I mean, that's what they think of. So I went back and Googled DMV's webpage in 2000, right? And I was really specifically focused on trying to find out what kind of electronic services were we offering back in those days. And if you look there is an online renewal of vehicle registration. If I remember though, back in 2000, you still had to do some mail, right? So you went online, you filled out a form, and then they sent you back something in the mail so you could write a check, right? So it was pretty rudimentary service, but we were trying to leverage this new web channel, right, for services. Now fast forward to today, right? They got a whole page of online services, okay? So again, what I was talking about on that previous slide is we were taking up all this modernization, right? We were really trying to digitize our business processes. And frankly, we've been somewhat successful, right? I mean, we have moved things out to the web, right? Quite a bit. DMV has a number of services available. I'm not saying any of us are perfect at this point, but I am saying that a lot of this transformation has occurred, and it's out there. Another great example is Franchise Tax Board. Okay, so here's their electronic services page from 2000. So there are some stuff, right? E-filing was around back then. It wasn't really widespread. There wasn't widespread adoption yet. I think back in 2000, I think they had 2 million returns filed electronically out of 15 or 16 million or whatever it was. So a few services here. And if we go now, here's a landing page, right, for FTB, and almost everything that we're doing is on the web with FTB. And I am going to take just a moment of pause here and do a little shout out to my FTB people. They're one of our great customers, but if you look at the red circle up here, My FTB, this was a recently launched application that they put out there. So this is your self-service registration portal, right? So you can go on here, you're going to register your name, you're going to register a password, they will send you a PIN code in the mail, which you would then use to go back in and authenticate your registration and password with. And then, once you do that, it's really cool, I just did this a couple weeks ago, you can see all your tax returns, right? And a lot of your tax data from history. So there's actually quite a bit of value there. They're actually really leveraging this web channel to provide better service to their customers, okay? So that's just a little pitch. Please go out. If you don't have My FTB and you live here in California, go do it right now. The people I work with in security over there wouldn't let me out of this room if I didn't say that. So anyway, again, large-scale transformation, kind of leveraging the internet as this new service channel. All right. So, and if we look at some of the statistics, I kind of showed you a couple examples from California. But if we look at it, you look at the adoption, if you just look at 2000 and 2011, those are percentages along the left. And these are percentages of e-filed tax returns, right? So back in 2000, we were down in the 20, not even quite 30% range. And then now if you look at today's statistics, like 2014, we're actually up above 90% in both cases for state and federal. So that's pretty dramatic, right? I think that's a pretty good improvement. So while people want to kick us around sometimes and tell us how bad we're doing our jobs, there actually has been a substantial amount of improvement in an adoption of technology over the past 15 years. And I think the biggest transformation, if you want to look at this, is really this, right? It's leveraging the internet as the primary service channel. And we're doing that because two reasons. One, it's more efficient for us than having people walk into an office and having to deal with wait lines and things like this. It's even more efficient than a call, right? A call center is not the most efficient way to handle business. The internet's just much more efficient. So there's a lot of advantages to the state to push things to the service channel of the internet. The other thing is that customers demand it, right? Or citizens are demanding this. They expect you, if they're going to interact with the tax board, they expect them to have some digital services, right? So it's sort of it's table stakes at this point is what it is. So 15 years of work, mission accomplished, right? We're there, right? We've completely achieved our objectives. We got everything digitized. All of our business processes are now electronic, right? Or we're close. We have a higher percentage of that for sure, right? Just take just a minute pause here and talk about a little bit of some of the impacts or outcomes of that, right? So moving all this stuff out of the file drawers. Do you guys, one of the great statements I remember back in 2000 when I first started and I was selling some of those package solutions, and it was, we want to get people out of line and get people online, right? So if you think about the transformation, it's actually kind of done that. But a couple of the implications of that transformation are this. Have the data centers shrunk? No, the data centers have gotten a lot bigger, right? There's a lot more equipment there. It might be more efficient, it's higher processing power, but a lot of these modern systems also take and use a lot of that power. Networking things. By nature, we've sort of taken a lot of complexity and added it to these systems, right? Where you used to have a mainframe box with some locked-in software that just was all bound up and didn't, just kind of purpose-built and just ran in there. Now we've got networking layer, we've got a database layer, we've got a middleware layer, we've got the application layer, we've got all kinds of different kind of layer cake stuff involved in all of our modern systems. And it's big. There's hundreds of servers in some cases, right? And lots of storage and all this. So complexity came along with that. But I'm not talking about that today. That's for the cloud, right? We're trying to push all that complexity to the cloud. We really are. But the other thing that resulted from that transformation was just an explosion, right, of data, right? Where before, a lot of that might have been locked up in places that we couldn't get at, whether it was in paper form or whether it was in a mainframe that was very difficult to access, right? We just have gobs and gobs and gobs of data. And what I would argue is that from the messages that I used to give to in the year 2000, saying, oh man, once you get all this stuff on digital, imagine the insight you're going to have into your business. That typically doesn't happen. For some reason, it doesn't happen. And I'll give you my theory on it, and you guys can comment. My theory is it's really hard to implement these systems, right? Especially in state government, where it takes us maybe 2 to 5 years to procure a system, and then we finally get it, and then we dig in, and we're like, okay, we're ready, and we pound. 3, 4 years later, we have a system that's live, right? But man, you have beat everybody down to a pulp at that point, right? Worked so hard to get it up and live. Oftentimes, I think what happens is like, hey, it's working, don't touch it. Don't do another thing. I don't even want to do an upgrade, right? And so the last thing I want to do is go and launch another big project, which is going to be my data warehousing project or my business insight project, right? Because I'm just fatigued. The organization has fatigue after these projects, and sometimes that's just kind of why it stops. All right, so, and it's not uncommon. It happens everywhere. So I just kind of want to make that comment. So mission accomplished, everything's working good, and then this guy shows up, right? He's got the mug. He's like, hey man, Accenture, Deloitte, Oracle. We spent the last 8 years building this system, and it's running great. We spent $200 million. But what's it really doing for me? Right? If we're not, getting new business insight, or, we have some customers coming online, but I have no idea, how many customers are coming online. I haven't really mined those metrics or anything. So I use this guy just as an example because I think it's funny, but I'm working with departments right now who are in this very specific situation. So they've spent the last 6 years implementing a modern system online, right? So they've got an online channel where people are coming in now. And the boss is basically saying, the director is saying, well, hey, I just spent $200 million. How has this system, number one, improved my worker productivity? right? Are we processing claims faster? You know, are we processing tax filings quicker? You know, how are we improving the productivity internally? Secondly, how have we improved access to our systems for our citizens, right? Are we getting the benefits out there to the people that need it the most, right? That's another big metric. Third, what is the customer experience on our system, right? It's one thing to go out and roll a system out. It's quite another thing to know if it's being effective or not in reaching your citizens, right? Is it easy to use? Are they completing applications online, or every time they get online, are they bailing and going to the call center, right? We have to know all that stuff. And that's what this guy is asking about right now, okay? That's what he wants to know. And so when I talk about next generation, the previous generation was, let's just get everything online, right? Let's do all we can just to get everything digital and get our people using the internet as a channel. The next generation is, okay, we did that. Now, how can we be super effective at doing this with this model, okay? And what you'll find is that with the adoption of the internet and stuff like that, and we're going to go through this in just a second, but it's quite possible, right? Because there is so much data available to you guys now. So that's kind of what this slide's about. It's really just data. Like I said, there's all kinds of other stuff we can do in terms of service effectiveness, but really at the core of what I'm talking about today is how to leverage that data to make your services more effective, to make them more well adopted by your citizens that are accessing your site, and also to make your workers more productive. So let me go back for a minute. So again, we did a good job, got everything online, put everything in digital records. How many people have done a data warehouse project? Raise your hand. Okay. Yeah. So that promise of that project, there's nothing like it, right? I mean, it is really appealing. I mean, you can get all these new metrics and things like that, and it's great, honestly. Right? I applaud the efforts of people that have done those projects. They are super, super hard. And so I'll give you an example. I used to work for a system integrations company. We were doing a large project, and one of the work streams was data warehousing. And I remember talking to the guy, the data architect who was out there, and I was saying, hey, what are you doing today? This is like year one of the project. He's like, well, Jason, I'm organizing 10,000 data elements into a data model. Now, if that's how every data warehousing project starts, I can understand some of the frustration with data warehousing projects, because I can't imagine trying to organize 10,000 data elements. That to me seems like an almost impossible task, right? And it's almost like saying, hey, I need to know the answers to all the questions before I even start asking them, right? I have to start building that data model before I even have any insight, right? So it's interesting to me that when I talk to people about data warehousing projects, very rarely do I have a bunch of people jumping up and down and saying, this was the greatest success our organization ever took on. More typically, I hear that was really expensive, it was super hard, and it just didn't quite turn out to be what we thought it was going to be. Okay? And that's not a knock on any tool or any vendor, it's just the way it's been. So when I talk about this, I like to talk about it in a different way, and so is Gartner. Right? So what Gartner's talking about is, listen, BI is always going to be there, right? And it has a purpose. But what are the other things that we should be looking forward to, right? And building a traditional warehouse is no longer sufficient. We require new information management capabilities, including unstructured data sources, okay? So that's what I'm focusing on for the next few minutes. And when we talk about that, we're talking about big data generally, right? So unstructured data. And you can kind of look at the diagram over here on the right. So remember when I was talking about that layer cake? That's one of the outcomes of our modernization efforts, is this kind of more complex stack of equipment and technology. Well, each one of those layers in that layer cake is spitting out data just about every second you sit here, right? It's some event log, it's a text file, it's just a gobbledygook of numbers and letters interrupted by spaces and weird marks, right? But there's just a gob of data that's coming out. This is, by far, unstructured data is the largest growing segment of your data portfolio at any one second, okay? Now, it's kind of the ugly stepchild of the data world. You know, we would all prefer that the data that we enter in goes into a nice row and a nice column, right? Seems to make it a little bit more organized. This doesn't fit that, right? It just comes out in whatever format it's going to come out in, and that's why people haven't looked at it, right? I mean, they've been generating it for years now, but they only look at it when there's a problem. My server's down. Oh, God, go get the server logs, right? Let's dump it into, let's take a look. But there's a lot more value in what you have already. It's already there, guys. It's just a matter of if you're storing it and reviewing it. So here's another thing from Gartner, which I thought was interesting. So, by 2017, over 50% of analytics implementations will make use of event data streams from machines, right? So again, Gartner's trying to, throw something out there and say, hey, guys, structured data is great, but you got to start looking at your unstructured data. There's a mountain of value that's locked up in that stuff. And then kind of leading into where I was going, right, when I said, this guy, remember this guy, coffee mug guy? And he's saying, hey, are we doing better from a worker productivity standpoint? Are we providing better service to our customers, right? Okay, another pet peeve. So I'm shopping online, right, and I get about halfway through, and then boom, I get a box that pops up on my screen. It says, hey, you want to take a survey about our website? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely never fill that survey out, right? So again, coffee mug guy can come up and say, hey, how are we doing with our customers? Do they like how we're providing service? Do they like our systems? And he could say, hey, why don't we do one of those online surveys? Well, you're going to get zero out of it. I'm telling you. I can't imagine what they're actually getting out of those surveys. It's probably terrible because people are just trying to get through that screen. So this is what I like. This statement to me is the most powerful thing. If you didn't take something away, take it away today. Machine data contains a definitive record of all of the activity and behavior of your customers, users, transactions, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So it's there. You don't have to survey anybody. All you got to do is look at the data, right? You'll find out when somebody logged in, what website they went to, how long they spent there, when they dropped off, right? Did they go to the call center? We know that too, right? All that insight is created inside that machine data, and it's being created right now. I mean, you guys don't have to do anything really to turn it on for the most part. It's already there. So there's a tremendous amount of insight there for you guys. And so just to kind of talk about, there's a number of examples here that we can talk about, but I want to talk about a couple public sector use cases specifically first. And so the first one we're going to talk about is Texas integrated eligibility, right? So, California it's a unique animal, right? So we don't have integrated eligibility, right? It depends on what you're trying to apply for, right? If you're applying for Medi-Cal, you go one place, and other programs other places. And we also kind of complicate that because we have distributed eligibility, right? We have a few different consortia that handle eligibility for social programs and Medicaid, okay? So there's C4 and CalWIN, you probably heard those in Los Angeles Leader, right? So, but Texas has it all in one place, which ultimately, hopefully, California will get there too. So they've got this giant system, right, that was probably built by, I think it was built by Deloitte, actually. The director's out there and he's saying, well, geez, how are we doing? First of all, can we make sure that the system's always up? Yeah, we can do that. We can always examine the logs and make sure that we see anything that's coming. But how are we doing in terms of cost reduction, right? Are we reducing our costs because we're able to more effectively monitor this system? So yeah, we're going to check that out. But the most important thing I kind of want to focus in on, I don't know what that button is, so I'm not going to push it, but if you see the end-to-end transaction analysis in real time, that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? He wants to know if his customers log in, first of all, maybe I want to get it, like he has this dashboard apparently. If you look at there, you can see a screen capture of it. But he's got a dashboard that has multiple panels on it that tells him like where the highest activity of eligibility applications is coming from, what precinct or what district, right? He's got all different kinds of metrics that he can look at on that dashboard. That just happens to be one of them. But the other thing that they can tell is, when a user comes in, here's the page that they're starting on in terms of the eligibility application, right? So when they come in, there's a bunch of stuff we can identify about them initially. One is, where'd they come from? What time did they start? What type of device are they using to access our system, right? Are they using an iPhone? Are they using an iPad? Are they using a Mac? Are they using, is it Mac OS? Is it Android? Is it iOS? All that stuff's out there. We can tell, right? What browser do they use? What browser do they prefer, right? Maybe if they're having trouble, maybe it's because one of those things is not matched up well with our development scheme, right? So we can actually monitor all those things as soon as they get there. Now, once they're in, there's a bunch of other stuff we can look at, right? We can look at how long they're spending on each page, right? So maybe page one's just, it's a piece of cake, right? It's a average time on that page is 20 seconds, right? And then you look at page 2, and average time on that's 45, and then you get to page 3, and then page 4, and page 5, and then all of a sudden you can see that on page 5 it takes like 30 minutes. What's going on, right? There's something going on there, and you can kind of peer into some of that user data. The other thing you can look at is the progression of pages, right? If it takes 10 pages to do a complete eligibility application, do we have people, is 100% of our user population coming in on page 1 and then finishing on page 10, right? We kind of know if they're finishing or completing that transaction. This is huge. If is anybody from EDD here? Yeah, so one of the things we talk about a lot, and we've showed some web analytics stuff out there, is how many people are coming in and being able to complete the transaction from point A to point B, right? I think that the clean claims is one of the things we talk about out there. So that's important, right? That gives you a good metric. The more clean claims we have, the higher worker productivity we're having, right? So that's kind of a point there. And we can also tell, the other insight that this gives us is that if they're all falling off on a specific page, maybe we should go and inspect that page, right, and find out what's wrong with it. Is there something there that is preventing people from continuing on with that transaction, right? Is there an eligibility question that's just not clear? Is there a piece of data that people don't like to share? What can we do? So if you think about it, what we can do is we can take that information back. It's almost like having a focus group, and we can inform our app development team, and we can start sort of refining the application, again, to provide a better customer experience. We can make sure that our application is suitable for iOS and macOS and Android, because maybe everybody's using a handset to get in, or a mobile phone to get in, or an iPad instead of their computer, right? So those are all, again, answering those two questions I talked about earlier. Are we being more effective from a worker productivity standpoint, and are we delivering better service to our citizens? Okay, any questions on that before I move on? All right. Now, again, it doesn't apply to one domain. That's a health eligibility example, but we've also got police departments, right? Mining machine data for insight into their operations. And whether that's monitoring their key systems to make sure they're up, the key like communication stuff, can't have the communication system down or stuff like that. But also like geographical analytics, let's throw all the GPS data in there on the cars, or let's look at our records management system for all of our cases and see if we can't map different crime statistics, right? So this is an example from Chandler, Arizona, and I can tell you that we just started doing the very similar exercise with Sacramento County Sheriff. They were looking for specific analysis on where crimes are happening, what types of crimes, response times and things like that to different precincts, right? So again, all of that stuff is locked up. This isn't a traditional data warehouse, right? We're not spending 8 months building a data model. We're just ingesting the data and we're immediately visualizing it. Okay, so let's see if this works, guys. So that's just a couple public sector examples, but I want to give you guys a little bit of inspiration. And this is a great one because there is a game this weekend. Does anybody know? I know Laura knows. Her husband's a big Broncos fan. Let's see if I can get this going. It's not my computer, so just give me a minute here. You guys hear that? Okay.
Big data is transforming the big game. As fans come together for Super Bowl 50, Splunk customers are deploying transformative technology to gain a competitive advantage off the field. Got pizza during halftime? Domino's customers do. Using insights provided by Splunk software, Domino's scores bigger profits during the Super Bowl by optimizing promotional campaigns and monitoring response times on its busiest day of the year. Making spectator sports more spectacular, VenueNext delivers MVP-class services to game day fans. The fan experience gets a makeover with Wi-Fi, instant replay on your phone, and food delivery to your seat.
Who knew?
Fans can even use the Splunk-powered app to park their car. Behind the scenes, Splunk crunches the numbers to learn what makes fans happy and what will keep them coming back in person.
You decided which vehicle you want to go with today?
It wouldn't be a Super Bowl without the ads. and Splunk is front and center there, too. While running a Super Bowl ad, online auto marketplace Cars.com has used Splunk technology to help ensure millions of potential car buyers could easily navigate the website during spikes in demand. When Nissan ran its first primetime commercial in 19 years during the Super Bowl, it experienced an exponential surge in traffic. Splunk made it easy to prepare for the traffic onslaught. Less time on analyzing and more action.
What do Domino's, VenueNext, Cars.com, and these other companies have in common? One thing, Splunk. They use Splunk to take their data and drive new insights and improve the fan experience and drive far better business results. Only Splunk is uniquely qualified to enable our customers to do that. With Splunk, score more touchdowns and no more fumbles.
And that's just the beginning. Big data is changing football. Using 15 years of NFL data, Splunk was recently able to deploy machine learning capabilities to predict a play and find patterns. Read the story in Sports Illustrated. More than 80 of the Fortune 100 use Splunk software and cloud services to keep IT service delivery running smoothly, protect their business, and gain a competitive advantage, which, in the big game of business, can mean more than no more fumbles. It means winning. Score more touchdowns with Splunk. We encourage end zone celebrations.
What did you guys think? That's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, they just launched this, obviously, it's in conjunction with the Super Bowl, but I thought it was an interesting collection, especially given the topic I was talking about today, which is, it's a different topic. We're really talking about how to analyze all that data that's getting spewed out, right? Whether it's a mobile phone, a Wi-Fi repeater, or whatever it might be, a parking sensor, right? I mean, all these different things is just spitting out tons of data, and you get some real interesting insight on how companies are using that data to their advantage. Now, I know that not everybody does ads, right? The lottery certainly does. There's no reason they shouldn't be monitoring the effectiveness of their ad campaigns, which we can absolutely do. There is certainly outreach programs with a lot of the agencies here at the state. Has anybody thought to measure the effectiveness of the outreach programs, whether it's public health, right, or even like EDD, if they're doing some jobs outreach kind of stuff? If we're going to spend some effort and time out there, why don't we measure that? And guess what? If we're doing a lot of it online with ad clicks and things like this, that's the easiest way to do it, right? All the data is going to be there for you. There's no reason to go mine that insight. So I thought that was kind of a cool. And the guy predicted the play, And I like how they showed Belichick, because everybody, I'm sure, thinks he's cheating, right? So that was kind of good. I don't think Splunk's associated with the Patriots in any way, just to make that completely clear. And they're certainly not helping my Niners yet. So, okay, so just real quick, just kind of on the how, right? And I'm not going to belabor this too much, but I did want to kind of tell you kind of what's underneath the covers of what we're talking about here. Obviously, it's the next-gen transformation. We're moving to better customer service. We're moving to better worker productivity, and we're doing that through the use of all that big data that's already there for us, right? All that modernization we did for the last 15 years, the treasure trove that's in there is all the data, okay? And let's start looking at it, right? So how do we do that? Okay, so I talked a little bit about machine data, right? And I talked about the layer cake, right? So look along the left side over there where it says sources. We got an order processing system, a middleware, a call center, and then we have Twitter, right? This is just 4 sources, right? Most of the customers that we have at the state of California, whether they're using our package for security or IT operations, whatever it might be, probably have upwards of 20 to 30 data sources at least, and they could probably get up to 100 easily, right? So this is just an example, and it's an interesting example. But look at that ugly data. Does anybody even want to look at that? I mean, that is, I don't know what's going on. It's all in different format, right? It doesn't have any super descriptive information in there. There's a lot of error information I don't understand, but what we can do is Splunk can make sense of this. Okay, that's what Splunk's really about. It's about taking all this unstructured data and making sense of it. We can pull this in, and the secret sauce of Splunk is we understand that. Right? We know how to extract key fields from that data, right? So if I click there, we can see all the different key fields that are popping out. So what Splunk does is it takes all those different data sources and it extracts those key fields, right? So I can know that customer ID shows up here and order ID here. Twitter ID is associated with the customer ID, right? So Splunk, that's the secret sauce. We're able to pull all that data out so that you don't have to sift through it all, okay? Once we pull it all out, then you can easily search through that data. You can report on that data, visualize the data, right? Do some modeling with that data. But most importantly, what Splunk allows you to do is correlate that data across all of those disparate data sources, right? So this is a cool example. I'm going to explain this. I'm going to try. So what happens is order processing system, right? Somebody's going out to order something online. So we have their customer ID. The order, obviously kicks some kind of error in the middleware. The order processing system, again, that layer cake, relying on the middleware to do its job, kicks some kind of error. You can read it, right? Oracle JDBC driver error establishing socket, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now the customer doesn't get to complete their order. We know this happened. Well, what happens next? They go to the call center, right? So they go into the call center, and you can see they called in at 4:33, and they got off the phone at 4:37. Okay, well, maybe they were on hold for that, right, that entire time, and didn't get to speak to anybody. So then they took to Twitter, right? We have a Twitter ID associated with the customer ID, and they took the time to say, can't buy this device from Acme, site doesn't work. Call gave me waiting on them for, gave up waiting on them for an answer, right? So that's the power of correlation, right? We can actually see what that entire customer experience was from the time they came into our website. They shipped off to our IVR, and then they went down and complained about us on social media. Now, this might seem like a really kind of pie-in-the-sky experiment, but it really isn't. We do this all the time for companies. And to put it in context of public sector, a good example is a director of my department or a board member, what have you, needs to go do a presentation to, let's say, a legislative committee, okay? And we're taking on a large project, or we just completed a large project. I need to measure customer sentiment. I want, as a director, I want to know what the public's saying about our new release, right? My FTB, right? Or EDD online, right? The UI online. What are they saying about it? Can I go out and gather any meaningful metric? You certainly can, right? We can go out and mine all the social media sites for customer sentiment and kind of collect those into a formatted graph that kind of shows, what customers are saying about our product or what our release. So it can be very real. I like the story here that it tells just how customers shift, right? If we're looking at worker productivity, we know the internet channel is the cheapest channel. So the more people we can keep out of that call center channel, we got to go fix that internet problem. Why is that breaking, right? Let's go fix that. All right, so yeah, our whole mission is just to make machine data accessible, usable, and valuable to everybody. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, the good part is we've spent this entire session talking about business analytics, right? Analytics that are meaningful to your business to improve service delivery, which is what you guys do for the most part. But the great part about our platform is that's one use case, right? We have 4 other use cases up there that you can leverage the exact same platform for. I will tell you right now that security is the biggest use case at the state of California, right? So people contact us for security. And guess what? All that data that I'm talking about, all that unstructured data, it all goes into the same place. It just gets leveraged in different ways for different purposes, right? The whole time we've been talking about how we can leverage it for business insight, all that same data can be used to look and to make sure that you're protected against cyber attack and insider threat for security, right? It can also be used to troubleshoot your large, complex layer cake IT systems, right? How can we, if we can sift through that data and we can correlate it across the network layer and the server layer and the database layer, the app server layer, and we can correlate all that data, we can reduce our mean time to resolve a ticket by 70 to 90% typically is what we see, because it's so much faster to search and alert on that data. And then, lastly, I'll just kind of mention Internet of Things, right? I mean, that's sort of a burgeoning space where we're finding more and more use cases for devices that are out there spitting signals. So one of the ones that we're doing most commonly in the public sector is around SCADA. So I don't know if you guys know what SCADA is, but those are sort of the remotely controlled devices that control conveyance, right? So conveyance of water, electricity, that kind of stuff. They're the devices that kind of control the flow of things. Well, think about if a hacker could get in and start hacking on that stuff. They could shut down water systems, sewer systems, electricity grids, et cetera. If you ever want to read a great book about it and scare the crud out of you, Countdown to Zero Day, it'll get you. So anyway, that's one of our most common use cases, right? So that's kind of an Internet of Things use case, but it's expanding into things like traffic sensors and all kinds of interesting areas, medical devices. I have a Garmin watch that I use for all my runs, and so it's great for me to import all that data and Splunk it around see how old I'm getting and ineffective at running. So anyway, great value in the platform. You might buy it for business analytics, you might buy it for security, but it has broad use across your organization for multiple use cases. All right, so that's where I'm stopping. So who wants to ask me questions about the Super Bowl? I have no horse in the Super Bowl. My team is out, probably for the next 5 years. Right, Tom?
Pick winners with Splunk.
What's that?
Using Splunk to pick winners, though, right?
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. There's probably people on our team that are doing something like that, but it's not Tom and I. This is Tom Evan. Tom is the other sales rep here in the state of California territory, so he's standing in the back room there. So anybody have any questions? I mean, literally, we have like 17 customers now in the state of California, and some biggies. We've got Franchise Tax Board, EDD, CalPERS, CalSTRS, Department of Justice. So yeah, there's tons of customers. Yeah, go ahead.
You also have the State Lands Commission.
We do. Yeah, David Swander. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have an on-premise solution. Do you guys offer a cloud hosted option, or is it just an on-premise only solution?
Yeah, that's a terrific question, and we do offer the cloud. So the short answer to your question is we do. And that's actually growing. It's a pretty large, rapidly accelerating segment of our business. Some people just don't want to manage the infrastructure that we require. I mean, I won't go into a long infrastructure discussion. It's not very difficult, but it's sometimes for a smaller shop especially, it's just not worth it. Yeah, so we have Amazon Web Services hosts our cloud offering, and there's actually the government version of Amazon Web Services available as well.
The follow-up question is, does it integrate with any other type of business intelligence platforms? We're getting close to deploying Office 365. I don't know if you have any type of integration with that. They have various business intelligence integration.
We generally have no issue integrating with any type of platform. There are some, especially some of the BI players, there are some of those guys that we're a little closer to just because we have strategic partnerships, like Tableau, for instance, is one. But we do have, so one of the things I haven't mentioned, so you see that little middle layer that says developer platform? So when you buy Splunk, you get the core platform, but you also get access to our app store, right? So our app store, it's called apps.splunk.com, has over 800 free applications that have been developed on top of the platform, right? And they're not developed by, there is a Minecraft app, but we'll just skip over that one for a minute. But they're mostly like, my Juniper developed app, my Cisco app, my F5, my FireEye, my Palo Alto, my other BI product app, whatever it is, right? There's 800 of them out there, and those are all free, right? That just comes with the platform. And what that helps, what an application is in that case, it's what we call a technology add-on, which helps us understand the type of data we're viewing. So if it's a Cisco router, we know it's a Cisco router, right? And it's a set of reports, dashboards, and alerts, right, that have been pre-built, right? And the great part about it, it's all open. So you might take those dashboards on, you say, yeah, I like this one, I don't like that one, and kick that one out, but I want to modify this one a little bit. Very simple to go into the search line and just go modify that search. So I don't, depending on the platform and things like that, but generally that's not an issue for us to share data. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, thank you for your time, and go enjoy a beer or some wine out there.